Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Rivilla. I am a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and founder of Roberto Rivilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but very often leave with something quite unexpected. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It is time for the 8th part of the Tailoring Talk James Bondathon, where we follow the James Bond film series in order, ticking off each movie as each month goes by. My guests and I deep dive into each film, covering everything from our overall review to the plot, clothes, gadgets, cast, behind-the-scenes stories, and, of course, our favourite moments. Step once again into the Tailoring Talk time machine as we head to 1973. Sean Connery opened the door to a new decade in Diamonds Are Forever, and a new actor takes up the mantle of 007. We are all so excited to be embarking on the Roger Moore era. As ever, I'm joined by our resident poker star, back from a weekend in Coventry at the Goliath Poker Tournament, where he was being scouted by MI6 to cover Bond's backside in Montenegro. It's Philip Rahman. Philip, how are you?
Bobby, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Did you wipe the tables or whatever it is that you poker people call it?
Do you know, if I was playing Le Chiffre, it would have been a lot easier because he bleeds out of his eyeball when he was bluffing. But unfortunately, there was none of that going on at this event. There was just far too many people to navigate through. But it was a fantastic event, and we'll probably go again.
Fantastic. And I'm delighted and privileged. Sorry, I cut you short there because I've got nothing more to say about poker. I'm delighted and privileged to be joined by my friend and colleague from the Play, Pause, Turn podcast, our mild-mannered, Galaxy Fold-wielding Android fanboy. It's Alex Hansford. Alex, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very good.
See, I really can't wait to have a play around with that phone, even though I'm banned myself from Android for the rest of my life. Can't break the Apple ecosystem. But how is it? How are you getting on with it? Because there's no point talking about summer because you forgot about all that as soon as you unboxed that thing the other day.
Yeah, I'm not interested anymore. I've got that. So yeah, no, it's really good. It's great. It's like having an iPad mini in your pocket. So which is kind of what you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, it solves a problem that you didn't know you had though. But it's great fun. It's great fun. So I like it.
Good. I'm glad. It's not an iPad mini though. Next, also from Play Pause Turn, the coolest dark saber wielding IT teacher around. His voice is so sexy that if he talks while crossing a meadow, poppies grow in his wake. It's John Evans. John, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, and I'm looking forward to licking you into shape tonight in this podcast as well.
I've got no idea. I've got no idea where that came from. John's
actually,
comment,
it's a
not
quote
mine.
from Live and Let Die, actually, Bobby, if you'd watched the film.
Oh, I missed that bit. That was probably the bit where I went to make an oat milk strawberry Nesquik. Last but not least, a returning guest who by now you'll have heard several times. He doesn't know it, but yeah, I have got some episodes at the time of recording that are scheduled to be released with your sultry tones on. A man with an eye for the finest quality in all things related to clothing. His tailor is arguably the greatest in the world. It's Richard Gore. Richard.
Hello.
How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. And yes, I would highlight that 80% of what I'm wearing came from you. The tie didn't, and in fact, my socks are high street. But other than that, yeah, everything's yours.
I am darning a pair of Y-fronts for you as we speak. So this is, as you've listeners probably now realise if you've been keeping count, it's going to be the biggest Bondathon yet because there are 5 of us this evening, which is brilliant. I'm going to try and add one more person every single episode. So by the time we get to Bond 25, it's going to be an absolute riot. So I think we're going to start with some icebreakers this episode in good old Play Pause Turn fashion. I don't know how many times I'm going to plug that other podcast, but I will try my best through this entire episode. That's Play Pause Turn.
We might get a couple more.
So icebreakers, I'm going to give you two things that I know are important to each of you, and you have to choose between them. So starting with Phil. Phil, poker,
Yes.
poker or Crystal Palace? Which lives and which do you let die?
Crystal Palace lives.
Oh.
I can live without poker because Crystal Palace is an institution as far as I'm concerned, and it's also very subversive, which is the sort of person I am. I don't support the really huge teams. I support a local team that's done well. Turns out we've got the biggest history of any Premiership club.
Yeah, and we really don't need it right this minute, Phil.
But if I had to choose, I would say Crystal Palace over
Crystal
poker.
Palace. That's Crystal Palace Football Club, not the building which burnt in a fire anyway. Brilliant. Thanks for that, Phil. Yeah. Alex, your Galaxy Fold or your Xbox Series X, which lives and which do you let die?
Oh, that's really hard. I think they're both going to hate me. That's the problem. I think the Xbox may have to go, partly to pay for the Fold because it's so expensive.
Can you not play the Xbox games in the cloud on your Fold?
Oh no, I could, and I'll have a massive screen to play on it. So that's kind of, I feel like that's partly cheating though. So yeah, no, the Xbox would have to go. I love the Xbox, and we'll talk about consoles another time. But I think there is so much I want to ask you about that gadget now. But we'll have to book in we have a separate podcast for that.
It's called Play Pause Turn. And John, you ready?
Lordy. Yeah.
Okay. John, your PlayStation 5 or your Darksaber, which lives and which do you let die?
I'm just calculating the monetary value of both more than anything else right now.
It's supposed to be about passion.
Oh,
he's looking.
Well, neither are fashionable, so.
But that's why we do a podcast called Play Pause Turn as well as this one. We don't care about fashionable.
Oh, God.
Oh, he's biting his nails.
I'm looking.
I'm so evil. I'm so evil.
He's checking.
The thing is,
just wait till I get to Rich.
They're both bloody hard to get hold of at the moment as well. So, I think the saber would have to go, unfortunately.
The saber. Oh dear. Okay, lost to the sands of time.
I look at it lots, but use it less, so that makes sense. Although I don't look at the PlayStation 5 at all because it's so big and ugly, isn't it? But
your reaction,
one's looks and one's brains. Oh, I can't decide. Yeah, I'll get the Darksaber.
The Darksaber's going.
I'm upset now. Move on to
that's actually made me thinking so hard about that all day. Worthwhile. Finally, Rich, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Your beloved Saab.
Yeah.
Or your beautiful Zeus. That's his still frame bike, by the way, guys. Which lives and which do you let die?
The Saab. It's gone. Sorry.
Answer very quickly.
Yeah, very.
There's loads of Saabs out there, as good as mine, better than mine, worse than mine. There is only my Zeus. It is unique, and even if I lost my legs, I'd keep her. It's that
I was just reminiscing over one of Richard's first emails to me as we developed our little pen friends relationship as future tailor and tailoree. I don't know what you call someone who uses a tailor, but anyway. And he was talking about that Zeus with so much love, and he sent me pictures of it as well, and it was very sweet and very endearing. And I imagine that Rich has written in his will somewhere that he is to be buried with that bike, basically, or with the turbo trainer in the chamber. Yeah, basically, he's nodding his head. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, guys. That was fun. So fun for me anyway. Spoiler alert. I'm going to get it in early this time. We are going to be spoiling Live and Let Die far more than any other film before. Roger that, guys?
Oh, very good.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, Alex has given up already. So if you haven't seen it, hit pause and rejoin us after. So, Live and Let Die, released in December 1973 with a runtime of just over 2 hours, budget of $7 million, $1 million more than Diamonds Are Forever, and it took $162 million. So slightly bigger budget and took about 60% more money than Diamonds Are Forever. So it was very well received. I am going to kind of cover the sort of plot points in turn, but firstly, our usual question, which is when we all first saw it. I saw it last night. I'm not going to say for the first time, because I know Live and Let Die was one of those films that my mum probably would have stuck me in front of to shut me up when I was about 4 years old or something. It came out a little bit before I turned up in the world, but it was one of those that people were able to have on VHS and stuff by that time. So, and this was I'm talking about the early 80s now. So I had seen it, but I didn't really remember much about it. I remember Solitaire, I remembered the voodoo stuff, and I remembered the crocodiles, and that was pretty much about it. Phil, I know that you only saw it this afternoon, but had you seen it before that?
No, not seen it before. What struck me about it.
Richard looks like he's literally a wasp has flown into his mouth and started mating with his tongue.
I mean, I hadn't seen it before. I had no idea about what the film was about. I mean, it followed the same structure as the previous films, except you didn't really get a sense of any introduction to gadgets or anything like that. They just kind of like found their way into the film. I thought that you know, it was much more. I think they used a lot more of the there was a lot of blaxploitation films out around that time. There was Shaft, there was other films that were out, and I think
Damn right.
kind of I think they jumped on the bandwagon a bit of those films. Yeah. They jumped on the bandwagon of those sorts of films and mixed it in with a bit of redneck in The Sheriff. But disappointed they didn't have a bit more of a jazzier soundtrack. If they were going to have, if they were going to set it in New Orleans and Louisiana, I was disappointed there wasn't more of a jazzier, funkier soundtrack to the film.
Yeah,
I think we have to come on to some of the scenes because there's some clear jazz bits.
Yeah, exactly. Whilst you're talking, Alex, when had you seen it previously, or had you seen it previously?
He's watching it now.
No, it's yeah. To be honest, it's one of those things that I would have watched when I was sort of 10 or something on a bank holiday, not because I wanted to see it, but because that was what was on, and it would have been one of those things that you would have watched and not really understood. And yeah, so I've seen it saw it recently, and it's really an interesting mix. It's like a cocktail. I'm going to go with the Hurricane, which is a New Orleans cocktail, because it's got all the right bits for a Bond movie in it, which is really good. Sometimes though they're a little bit shaken up, so they're not always in the right order, and so sometimes you do end up going, how do we get here? But ultimately it pays off at the end, and so I think it's a good one. It's not their best, but it's good.
You enjoyed it though.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, cool. John?
So this film was released on the year I was born, and I first watched it in January of 1980 when I must have been about 7 or 8 with my dad. It was on ITV. And ITV was one of 3 channels in the UK at that time. And at that time, 23.5 million viewers watched it. And I was one of them with my dad. So it actually holds the record for the most watched movie to be broadcast on British television. And I think partly obviously because of the change from Connery to Moore, people were interested to see what that was. So for me, it's my first memory of Bond. And I think we mentioned this in a podcast before when you asked us, who was your first Bond? So I grew up with Moore, and Live and Let Die is etched into my mind. And I think of all the Bond films we've talked about so far, despite the funky clothes and the central plot around drugs. I think it was actually okay generally for younger people to watch, more or less. Gloria Hendry in a bikini, Rosie Carver notwithstanding. For me, my review at the end of this, my rating out of 10 is going to be somewhat skewed by my kind of memories of this film and my personal life and how I watched it. But I just thought it was just a fabulous tapestry of wonderful 70s colors, designs, fashions, with a slight sort of dash of slightly dodgy attitudes of the era that were a little bit worrying for me, which we'll come on to later on. And mirroring Alex's blaxploitation comment, really, but the wrong sort of blaxploitation in some respects. But anyway, I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, Rich.
I can't remember the first time I saw it. It must have been about 7, I think. Like John, Roger Moore was my first Bond, and for a long time was my favourite until I grew up and realised there were others. Not this one, but Octopussy is my first memory of watching Bond. But yeah, I've seen this 3, 4, 5 times because it's been on TV lots, and it terrified me when I was 7. I was absolutely terrified of the voodoo stuff going on, and didn't understand it. But it was. I like it. I think this is. If you looked up Bond film in a dictionary, this is what it would be. It's got everything. It's got a fight on a train, which, as you know, is my red line. If it doesn't have a fight on a train, it's not a Bond film.
In my notes, I put it's ended, and then I put train equals forward caret fight ? You see my hook hand guy ! Another dressing gown ? and then WTF. But I also put Rich will be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the music, the reason that they stuck with, because Saltzman liked the theme, but said, Paul McCartney, would you mind if we got somebody else to sing it? And he basically went, there's no way anybody else is singing it. So that's why it's Paul McCartney. Although Saltzman preferred the version that you hear in the film by Brenda Arnault.
Yeah, well,
which, to be fair, I thought was a really good version as well. Yeah.
We'll come on to the music in a second, but I'm really glad that it went that way. So film opens, and I'm just going to go to my notes, actually. It's the first time that I've scribbled notes during a film. For me, by the way, this actually flew by. The 2 hours did not feel like 2 hours, and we know that I'm very easily distracted. So reflecting on it today, I think I rather enjoyed it. So anyway, we'll get through all of this, and then we'll see where we end up with our ratings and reviews at the end. So it opens in the United Nations, and there's some sort of nonsense going on, and the British diplomat or whatever he is gets killed. And then it shoots to New Orleans, and I've just written here, guy gets shivved.
Structure, isn't it?
I am from South London after all. So yeah, it's a CIA agent who's watching a funeral, and as the funeral sort of goes past, some bloke comes up and shoves a knife in his gut, and then they lift the coffin down, take the body away, and then they start dancing. So the coffin basically didn't have a bottom, obviously, and when they put it over the stuntman, it had grab handles built inside, so the stuntman could get his feet and his hands up and then just hold on while they carried him off. A bit of trivia there. And then it goes to Saint Monique, and a third agent gets killed at Baron Samedi's voodoo sort of thing. He's tied up, and then he gets bitten with a snake and killed as well. And then it shoots to the titles. What did we think of this opening sequence, trying to remember opening sequences that had gone before? I felt it was kind of low-key in a way. Where should we go first? Let's go Richard first.
Yeah, I thought so too. I liked it. It had me wondering what on earth was going on. But then at the same time, you think, yep, this is set the scene. It doesn't there's no crash bang wallop. It's just this is the scene and it starts, and I liked it. I thought it was low key and subtle, which is not things you normally associate with James Bond.
No, I thought it was quite different. It kind of set up more like a really good sort of TV show that was, you know what I mean, like a spy TV show or something. It had that sort of feel to it, which was pretty cool. Do you know what's confused me? I said before we started recording, because there were so many of us today, that when we make a point, put your hand up if you've got something to say about it, and then obviously if one person doesn't, that cuts the numbers down. But see, we've all got backgrounds where Phil, DJ Fruit Shoot, Rich, and Alex have just got their homes in the background. I've got a sort of modern-looking poster of Live and Let Die. John has got Baron Samedi, whatever his name is, holding up Jane Seymour's hands. So I keep thinking that John's putting his bloody hands up. So we'll go to John, since you've got two very lovely arms and hands up there. What did you think of the opening, John?
I'm looking at my notes too, Bob, because I do notes for every Bond film. I've written down great intro. I really enjoyed it because it was just, I think it sets the tone for the film. It's kind of, I think the word madcap can be used with the translator being like killed with his own headphones, and the and my other half was watching it with me before she passed out from tiredness, as she always does. But she said to me, "Hold on, though. Does that mean that everybody in New Orleans is in on it?" And I said, "Yeah, they're all in on it. That's how it works." And she said, "What's going on?" So I think that kind of sets the tone for the film. I mean, later on in the film, there's a wonderful scene where they're trailing Bond, and every single person in Harlem has something around them, which is a gadget, which is in communication with Kananga, which we'll talk about later on. And I just thought that was hilarious.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
Like the whole of Harlem is under the pay of this guy, and we're all talking to him. So the intro, yeah, and the dancing ladies, I thought was quite good. Did anyone notice? And I'll shut up after this. At one point, we have the dancing silhouette ladies. And I'm holding my hands up again, dancing. Had there's one of the old classic 1980s optic fiber lamps as the background. And they must have got some guy just put his finger behind so you couldn't see it, just wiggling the optic fibers while she danced in front of it. I mean, that for me was one of the most inventive special effects I've seen for that era. It really impressed me.
Sorry, are you talking about the title sequence now?
Well, I'm talking about the intro that goes into the title sequence, yes, because they're all connected, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really notice.
Slightly off topic, but the most inventive title sequence ever is Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And they get the Doctor Who bit by sticking a piece of paper. They get a camera pointing at its own monitor, so you get a feedback loop, just like when you put a microphone in front of a speaker. And then they just raise a piece of paper that says Doctor Who on it, and that's how they got the lettering to come up the screen. Absolute genius. But yeah.
I would be saying, wow, that's awesome. I never knew that, if I knew what the hell you were talking about.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Whilst hiding behind a pillow in terror. The theme tune, it was so good.
Okay. For some reason, I don't ever remember the theme tune to Doctor Who. I know the song, though. I know the music. No, I know the music. I don't know what it looks like.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Are we talking about the really old ones with John Pertwee?
Yeah, right at the beginning.
Okay, well, like 007. So Peter Davidson was my Doctor Who. Because the first time I saw Doctor Who, you remember they used to show it when we got back from school, like at about 5:30 in the afternoon. And the first episode of Doctor Who I ever saw was when Tom Baker dies because he falls off a bridge. I'm just remembering this from like being 8 years old or something. And he hits the floor and then he transforms. And then Peter Davison gets up. He regenerates, sorry. No, I'm not a Doctor Who fan. And then he regenerates, and then that's the start of the Peter Davison era. So
Peter Davison is pretty much the Roger Moore of all the Doctor Who's as well.
I'll be editing this in about 6 weeks, Rich, and then I'll get you for whatever that was. So anyway, sorry, moving on. Alex.
Yeah, I think I think it's.
I know
It's,
we already started with you, didn't we? You said it was like madcap and bonkers.
we've
I know
done.
you
Well,
did.
yeah,
That
no,
was
we've done
John.
that. No, we
There's
did
too
talk
many
about. He
people
talked
here.
about madcap.
Probably can't
Yeah.
cope.
Yeah, I think.
My head's broke. Do you know what? Also, I found this tube in the kitchen cupboard, and I had a glass of water before coming up to start this, and I thought it was like vitamins or something, but Carolina just told me that it was CBD.
How appropriate.
She just messaged me and she's just said, "Did you just put like 3 pipettes of this stuff in your thing? Because you know it's CBD, right?" And I was like, "Oh, no." So yeah,
Listen carefully.
I think
Bobby's
it's
joints
taking
become
effect.
more and more floppy throughout the podcast.
Sorry, Alex, back to you.
Yeah, no, I do like the intro. But it does set the tone for it, and the whole fact that people are killed in increasingly comical ways kind of sets the tone for this film. The only problem is that you can't take it seriously then, because you're looking at it going, hang on a minute, if they've killed someone, and then put a coffin on him, it's only going to get worse, and it does only get worse. And then as we go through the thing, there's just increasingly mad ways of like, you know, things happening, like in the cafe where there's hidden stuff, and you know, it's just it just gets more and more funnier as you go along. But I'm not sure that that's what they intended. But it really does, like when you need to have it with a drink, and then you need to kind of go, okay, this is going to be fun, and then as you're drinking more, you're just going to find it better and better as it goes along.
Yeah, I mean, then we get to the title sequence. So Phil, I'm going to give you a little bit more brevity here, but we get to the title sequence, which I was really underwhelmed by, but the theme song is one of the best theme songs there has ever been in any James Bond film. It is definitely in my top 5 for sure. I absolutely love this Paul McCartney song. It's just got everything that you'd ever want from a Bond song, and I thought it was just such a great one for Roger Moore's first outing as 007 as well. I'm so glad that he got the gig to write this. Well, actually, apparently while they were filming or finishing Diamonds Are Forever, Paul McCartney sent them a demo of that song, because by then they must have known that John Barry wasn't going to be available to do this film. And so Paul McCartney apparently sent the producers a demo, and Harry Saltzman listened to it and was like, yeah, it's all right. He didn't really like it at first, but then eventually it obviously got the gig, because that's what we got today. But Phil, you know, you're really into your music. I know that some of the past songs, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, you've absolutely loved. How did this sort of fit in with the songs that we've heard to date?
I mean, I've always liked the song, and I've liked the version that Guns N' Roses did in the 90s as well. But the thing about this was I felt that the actual style of the song didn't fit with the actual movie. When I saw the movie, I felt disappointed that it wasn't a bit more of a jazzier, soulful version. That would be my only criticism. What struck me was the visuals of the title sequence. It reminded me of The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, but in color. You know, with the skeletons going from like the normal face, and then going to the skeleton with the lights coming out of the eyes. It just reminded me of you know, they're saying, you know, Crazy World of Arthur Brown going fire. It was that kind of like vibe. So great title sequences, great song. Just wish the style fitted more with the type of you know, the content of the film.
Yeah,
but it's pretty impressive to have George Martin as the guy doing your music, though, surely, for a film.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the thing. So John Barry wasn't available, so the fifth Beatle, George Martin, basically did the score. And you notice the difference in it from the very opening gun barrel sequence. The music was kind of just slightly, there was a difference there. I wrote jaunty in my notes. I was like, oh, this is a bit more jaunty. So yeah, so since Phil gave a really tenuous music link that I have no idea what he was talking about, but Rich probably does. Over to you, DJ Freakshoot. how was Live and Let Die for you? I know you really like that song.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And something I was thinking about is you can tell a good song is if it can be covered and it's still a great song. And Guns N' Roses covered it, of course, and that's still brilliant. I see Phil's point. It is separate. It's almost a standalone thing of let's write a theme song, and the title is Live and Let Die. So we'll make this amazing record from it, and it doesn't actually matter what happens in the film because we're just going to completely ignore it. But it's up there in my top 5 themes.
Can we have a straw poll though? When you hear Live and Let Die, who cannot help going, yes it is, yes it is, yes, when that sequence comes in, that riff? Because no one, I don't know anybody who cannot stop themselves from singing that bit when they hear that song. And that's a sign of the song as well.
I go quiet when that bit happens, and my imaginary backup people sing that bit for me, and then I continue.
But you're still thinking it, aren't you? There you go.
No, not really, because I've got other people to do that for me, John. So then after the title credits, we then get our first look at our new 007. So we're in James Bond's Muse apartment, where he's just bedded a lovely Italian, who we learn later is an Italian agent. She's not. She's played by a British actress, but
Madeline Smith.
and then Madeline Smith. And then there's a knock at the door, and I mean that's the moment where we then get Moore's humor, because that's the first thing he says is, you know, you're not married. Yeah, that's it. Not married, are you? Goes to open the door, and M's there, and then all of a sudden she has to sort of, you know, she disappears, but he doesn't know where she's hidden herself. And M sort of strides in because he needs to tell Bond that these 3 agents have been assassinated under mysterious circumstances, and he's got to go to. Now, I don't actually remember any of what M was saying to him, because I was actually with Bond on the whole trying to keep M away from the chick. And I don't know if anyone else felt that as well. I thought that was so clever, that scene, because it really did put the audience on the side of Bond. I have no idea what M was saying to him at all. I missed the mission brief altogether because I was just worried about Bond being caught out. I'm just going to
dying, I think, Bobby, and you've got to get over there and sort out what's going on.
You're flying to New York. That's it. Yeah.
Well, I put missing Italian agent, monogram dressing gown. I want one. M is stressed. Money penny exclamation mark catches the girl. Those were my notes.
M was stressed because the actor Desmond Llewellyn. Was it Desmond Llewellyn? I can't remember his name.
No, Bernard Lee.
It's Bernard Lee, isn't it? He wasn't very well in that scene at all.
Oh,
so he was filming whilst feeling quite unwell. So I think it was quite. You think he's acting or the usual intolerance for Bond, but I think he's just not very well.
I think he did really well because he's come in. He's been opposite Sean Connery for such a long time by this time, and he just didn't break stride. It was the same level of annoyance at Bond as he normally has, and I just thought Roger Moore was perfect, and I was like, right, settled into my seat, and I was like, okay, fine, this is Bond now, not a problem with it. But then the jokes, me and Carolina were just laughing our nuts off all the way through this scene. It was just brilliant because then there's the coffee machine where he asks him if he wants a coffee, and it's this really sort of convoluted sort of coffee maker, and then when he hands him the cup, M says, is that all it does? And then it's the Rolex, he shows him the Rolex with the magnet in it, and then ends up using that in the end to unzip the girl's dress and everything. I just thought it was all brilliant. Phil?
No, all I was going to say was that in 1973, with that coffee machine, would that have been a very high-tech bit of equipment?
Well, yeah, it wouldn't have been in people's houses.
Yeah.
I think it was perceived as a gadget, like a really cool gadget to show off in the film. We now know it as an espresso machine, obviously, but I think in the 70s, that was like something completely unknown and new, which is probably why Roger Moore couldn't bloody use it. That's why.
Yeah, I noticed that he spilled something, didn't he?
Rich?
What? Just picking up your point about the one-liner. The last time I was on one of these calls, we were reviewing On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and commented that George Lazenby was forced. It felt forced when he was delivering his one-lines. Roger Moore just did it perfectly, and immediately, I mean, I noticed it and just went, yeah, he. One of the things that Roger Moore can do is deliver those lines without it sounding camp or anything. He just drops it in, and it was perfect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then we see Lois Maxwell as well. Very brief appearance as Moneypenny, sadly, in this, but again, she just didn't break stride. I think she's just wonderful. I found out afterwards when I was doing my research. I didn't know this because obviously I haven't seen the Dalton films either, but she played Moneypenny for quite some time. Yes, Rich, you know this. You know that. Obviously choose to wipe that fact from your memory every single time we get together.
Hold on. You've not seen the Dalton films?
No.
Yeah, quite.
I've seen the beginning of License to Kill when Benicio Toro makes his film debut and they kill Bond's friend, I think, quite horribly.
Yes.
That's all I've seen of that. And then I've seen some horse riding, which I think was The Living Daylights. And there's a Miriam Darbo's the Bond girl, the blonde lady. But I don't know why I know that. Probably because I saw her and thought, oh, she's all right, and I Wikipedia'd her. That makes me sound really creepy. But yeah, I haven't seen anything. Oh no, and Carrie, what's her name? Short hair. I saw a scene on a boat between her and Dalton as well, but that's just because it happened to be on TV and I was channel surfing. No, I haven't seen them at all.
We're going to have great fun when we get to that point.
We are.
Yeah.
Oh, we are.
Yes.
Okay, so Bond gets his mission and off he goes. And what have we got here? Rolex magnet, zipper, and tarot cards. Ah, here we go. So velvet collar, navy cashmere.
Can I just, whilst you're looking for your notes here, can I just
go for it.
Can I just say, first of all, yes, he has the best quits. But I thought Bond looked very good in the suits in this film as well.
I was just about to...
He comes out of his apartment, doesn't he? In this lovely sort of red and white pinstripe tie, blue shirt. He's got the black leather gloves and the overcoat. I just think he looked very dapper in this film, apart from one scene, which we can talk about later on, where he looked terrible.
Double denim.
Yeah. Oh my god.
This is
string vest and double denim.
So we have the brief scene with the tarot cards where we, because we don't see Solitaire, but basically we're establishing that, he's a man who's going to come here by boat and he's going to bring destruction and death and whatever. So that's the montage where he flies to New York. So he arrives, he comes out of the airport, and immediately I wrote down, this is the best dressed Bond to date, like without question. That double-breasted navy cashmere overcoat with a velvet collar, beautiful. Richard and I were talking about overcoats earlier today, and it is on my wish list. The tailoring, I thought, took a nosedive in... Oh God, what was it? You Only Live Twice.
Oh yes.
No, You Only Live Twice. Lazenby, I'm going to put him to the side because I thought generally the tailoring was very good in that. If you remember, it was just the frilly shirts. So the tailoring in On Her Majesty's was very, very good. But yeah, I just from the Connery Bonds, it just took a nosedive in You Only Live Twice. But here it was like I still haven't found out who it was, but whoever was doing the costuming and stuff just did such a bang up job. But you can see the flares starting to creep in because we're in that part of the 70s. But anyway, he just looked fantastic every single time he was on screen. I've made notes all the way through on all the outfits, and I'm going to be recreating all of them for myself over the coming 2 years. So yeah, and then I wrote, he looks amazing. The taxi driver looks dodge, but it turns out that the taxi driver wasn't dodge. He was obviously a CIA guy who'd come to pick Bond up. But on the way to meet Felix, the guy is assassinated because Whisper the Harlem gang or whatever it is henchman, basically rides up in a pimpmobile, which I think is what they actually refer to it as, and he's got a little poison dart sniper thing in the wing mirror, and he lines up and then shoots him dead, and it's the first attempt basically to kill Bond off. But yeah, John's already commented on the clothes. Anyone else? Rich, did you start making furious notes and adding to your wish list, looking at the outfits in this film?
Yes.
Or did it at least give you some inspiration for color combinations that you'd not thought of before? Because that's also what it did for me.
I look at lots of things for color combination inspiration, and yeah, this was one of them. And I messaged Bobby earlier and said that watching this film made me reevaluate my views on double-breasted suits, because he just pulls them off so beautifully. And I haven't got a double-breasted, but now I need one. Not entirely sure for what, but I absolutely need one. Just on the tarot cards thing, the tarot cards were also used, those tarot cards were used in an episode of X-Files, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, which is one of the best, funniest X-Files episodes out there. But they, on the back of the tarot cards is 007, which they had to mask out for X-Files. But yeah, it's the same tarot cards.
Yeah, those tarot cards, originally they'd approached Salvador Dali to design them, to draw, to paint them and whatever. And then he told them his fee, and they said no thanks. But he carried on anyway, and he actually completed the set. I can't remember what happened to them. They probably got sold to some collector for millions. But interesting bit of trivia on the tarots there. Phil?
Well, the thing that struck me about it, and this is very much now that I'm out of the tailoring world, is that I was much more excited about the suits that black guys were wearing at the time. Because that's the one piece of history in terms of how black people dress that isn't replicated now. They replicated the hip hop scene, they replicated, the hippie thing, but it's been very hard to really get a very unique sense of how people dressed during that blaxploitation period. And I think because this film came out just after the first Muhammad Ali Joe Frazier fight. The first one, where it was the biggest fight, it was the fight of the century. It was so big that even Frank Sinatra, the only way that he could get in was to be a photographer for the fight. And when all the people came in to watch the fight, they had those outfits. The black guys came in, they were clearly very well off, and they had the silk, they had the long coats, they had the canes, they had the big afros, and they had the flares, and they looked amazing. And that's the sort of thing that struck me about this film. Those are the sorts of outfits that I want to get, but I know I couldn't pull off.
Yeah.
Do you know the term la sape or sapeur, Bobby?
No.
So they're a lot of generally people from the Congo, but they are famous. They're called sapeurs. Very, very famous for dressing in the most amazing vintage colored suits, and they, when they go out on the town, they really, in a kind of quite a poor area, they look absolutely amazing. And it's a big kind of.
Is this from that Guinness advert? Is that?
Yes, I think it might be actually.
Yeah, where they do it there, where they go out on a night out, they go to an event, and they all dress in the amazing suits.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. The sapeurs from the Congo and other South African countries, like a really unique, really exciting, colourful, but also smart and stylish fashion. Combination of bright, sort of, powdery colours, stripes, clashing colours, but just seem to work really well with braces, umbrellas, massive kind of coloured, almost like sort of comic versions of Louis Vuitton bags as they're carrying canes and wide brim pimp hats. It's just the most amazing fashion. And that's what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
I'll try and find a link to show you at some point.
I mean, straight after this, because we meet Felix, there's yet another actor playing Felix Leiter. It was, oh God, what's his name? I've got it here. And then Bond has to do some detective work, but the license plate of the Pimpmobile leads him to Harlem. I thought the bit where he found the car in the garage was actually really, really good. It was a little bit of good sort of detective work from Moore, and I just thought he played that little sequence really, really well.
David
but
Hedison.
yeah, I thought he was a really good Felix Leiter, actually.
Well, in my notes, I've written down, hey, it's my Felix. He's the Felix I remember when I watch films.
Yeah, so he's going to be Felix for a couple more movies, I guess, then.
I think he's not as prevalent as we think.
Oh, okay.
I think he's only, Rich will probably know this. I think he's only in one other Bond film, but he's really memorable. Rich.
And he's not in it for very long.
No, he's not, is he?
No.
Don't spoil it.
Yeah.
No, I won't. But if you've read the book for Live and Let Die, you'll know what happens to Leitner.
Well, the book is very different, isn't it? Because they really changed a lot of the book for this.
And much like Jim Simon songs, they took bits out and stuck them in other films. So yeah, they took a load of stuff that happened in this and stuck them in various other Bond films.
Right. What, mainly around that Roger Moore era, or even beyond that?
Around and beyond.
Right. Okay. Wow. I'm going to read more into this. I think I mentioned this before on the last recording, but I want to get the full set of Fleming novels and actually read them, not just have them on display in the cabinet like I've got with all the Blu-rays of the Bond films.
I might have them in the garage, which if I can dig them out before Saturday, I'll bring down with me.
Well, you don't want them?
No.
Are you mad?
I've read them.
Yeah, but you've read them, but
they're not posh. They're not a posh, collector's edition. They were the cheapest one we got from the book people.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Your son
and they've been in my garage for 2 years.
Your son might want to read them one day.
I'll get him a decent copy then.
I feel so special.
This is more content for your podcast, isn't it, Berto? You'll just
true.
carry on and go on to the books.
Go on to the books after, exactly. So the other note that I made was everyone drives exactly the same car.
They do.
Because carrying on from Diamonds, Ford obviously was sponsoring the vehicles, and it was contractual that it would only be their cars featured. And as a consequence, we don't get a Bond car in this film, which is the one.
Route Master.
You get a Route Master bus and a speedboat.
We kind of get a Bond boat, don't we?
Yeah.
Rather than a Bond car.
Yeah, sort of. But there was nothing special about it. The guy chasing him had a better boat.
Yeah.
This is it.
They were Chevrolet Impalas, the cars you can see, and the Pimpmobile was actually a Corvette, but with some fiberglass on it.
Yeah. But otherwise, everything else everyone was driving was Ford trucks, Ford vans, Ford cars, you name it. So there we go. Not as jarring as product placement in later Bond films, I have to say, but still an early example of product placement there.
You BMW, stop it.
But then Bond wanders into the club, and obviously, and I did write, this taxi driver looks well dodge.
Well, his quote, man, the last thing he says, or when he gets in the taxi, he goes, "For $20, I'll take you to a Ku Klux Klan cookout. Right on, brother."
Yeah. But then from here, in this next sort of 10-minute sequence in the club, like almost every, what a black person calls a white person cliche just came out, honky. I didn't write them all down actually, but you guys know what I mean, because you've seen the film. But I did write, when he goes in the club, I was like, God, he sticks out like a sore thumb. And then Cotto is smooth, because this is where we first meet Yaphet Kotto as Kananga, who is the main villain of this piece. And he does look good. And this is, Phil, where I was going to mention the outfit. Like, this is the best dressed Bond film, not just because of how Bond is dressed, but how everybody around him is dressed as well. They all look phenomenal, like so good. And it kind of reflects kind of real life today, where Richard, close your ears. Most of my white clients will play things very safe and have to be coaxed into doing things that are adventurous. But my clients of color are all over the stuff that looks more exuberant and wow factor and will turn heads and so on. It's like they see those as navy and grey suits, and yeah. So it was just fascinating for me. I just loved it. I mean, I almost want to watch this film again as soon as possible, just to look at the clothes, not ignore everything else that was going on. So yeah, and I also wrote Jane's, because this is where we first meet Jane Seymour. Also saw Jane Seymour OMG.
Oh my god!
So
Straight in there with the underwear.
What I would like to do now is also find out what you all wrote down if you were making notes when she first came on the screen. John,
I just had in capitals with 5 exclamation marks, Jane C. Moore.
Oh my god! Anybody else? Rich.
Yes, she's great. And she was 20, I think, when she did that
So
film.
young.
Yes. As a personal preference, I thought Diana Rigg's entrance was classier.
Yeah, classier, but you know, this one was still. I mean, Diana Rigg's still our number one. I did announce that on Instagram.
Okay, good.
I did announce Diana Rigg, number one Bond girl ever, as voted for by the Tailoring Talk team. And then I had a lot of people direct messaging me, like saying, but, or I think, and I had to reply to all of them saying, by the Tailoring Talk Bondathon team. Are you part of that? No, you're not. So fuck off.
How to win friends and influence people.
Yeah, I dropped slightly my following on Instagram, but who cares? I don't care. So all the Bitcoin traders got offended. So yeah, but Yaphet Kotto looks so good. He did not have to audition for this role. The producers saw him in 110th Street, across 110th Street, and basically he was approached and said, what are you doing after this? And he said, probably just going back home. And they said, no, you better get ready to stay on, because you're going to meet one of the Bond producers in the morning, and then you're going to start filming. And he was like, yeah, okay.
One of the other Bond girls was in 110th Street as well. I think, was it Gloria? She was also in it.
Possibly. I mean, to go back to what you said during one of the Connery films, where you said that, you know, they kept recycling the same Chinese actors because there weren't many. I'm guessing it might have been. It might have been similar with black actors back in that day, because not as many of them got the chances that they maybe should have done.
We need to point out one of Yaphet's most famous films,
The Running Man.
Of course, no, Alien.
Oh yeah, that one.
Alien.
He's one of the engineers, isn't he? One of the engineers on the Nostromo.
Yeah, he is.
And it's a great role because he's so natural in that role. He's so believable as a space engineer. And I think he just was so good at breaking racial stereotypes. Really, he was born in Harlem as well, so I thought this was really appropriate. His old stamping ground. But interesting guy, interesting look to him in this film, isn't there?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I thought Yaphet Kotto was a brilliant performance. Gave a really brilliant performance in it. But I thought what was significant is that I've seen other actors who I do recognise, who it turns out aren't actually actors. They were basically people who were doormen in and around Harlem, and they knew it really well. So when those people were brought on to kind of be Yaphet Kotto's, sidemen,
like Julius Harris, who plays two.
Yeah, like Julius Harris. He was a tough-looking guy and very believable. And I thought, even though he wasn't an actor, I thought he was brilliant in the performance.
He was a bouncer. Well. He worked as a bouncer in New York. Yeah.
Rich?
Like you said, I thought everybody looked amazing. Kananga, by the way, is the name of the stuntman who jumps across crocodiles.
Well, Kananga is the name of the stuntman who jumps, but he's not primarily a stuntman. He actually was the owner of the alligator
crocodiles farm.
Yeah, or crocodile farm, or whatever it is.
Whichever ones. They're all scary.
So we'll come on to that when we.
Didn't they? They did well this film.
But it was by chance, though. But we'll come on to that when we get there. But this is where he meets Solitaire, and then we get Roger Moore's comedy breathing a bit more. And you've got to remember, the one thing is that Roger Moore got a lot of flack for turning Bond into a comic strip or whatever is a comment that someone made about him. But it was actually the producers that gave the go-ahead to, because their view of Connery was that if Connery was sat sort of having dinner with a girl, he could just as easily have a gun pointed at her abdomen and be talking to whoever was there. But if Moore did that, it would be out of character. It wasn't him. And Moore, Jane Seymour said that he was funnier. He was 10 times funnier in real life than what we ever saw on film. And so they gave the green light to the writers to basically adjust the script and to put more humor and so on in there to lend itself more to his natural tendency for humor. And he comes across that way in interviews and so on. I know John's got the 007 diaries that Roger Moore wrote during the filming of this, and his humor just strikes any interview that you see or read with him, his humor really does shine through. So I think a lot of the criticism directed towards him is unwarranted and it's unfair, because he's basically just an actor doing a job. And I thought in that context, he did a very, very good job during his tenure as Bond. But we do get to see more of his humor breathe out here, because then she sort of, does his tarot when he goes and introduces himself. And that's the first time he does say the immortal words, Bond, James Bond. And I did remember this for some reason. It had been buried into my brain, but I predicted the cards before she turned them over, because I was like, okay, it's, what am I, the Fool, and then the Lovers. So for some reason, I do remember that bit. But I thought it was just really, really nice for them to give him that breathing space to do all of that, and it was very entertaining. Rich?
Yeah, I like it. I would be one of those people that says the Roger Moore films are just silly, but I hadn't seen Pierce Brosnan ones at that point. So clearly not. My levels are just
snowboarding scene. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh my god.
One of the things that I still have a fondness for Roger Moore films, even though he's not my favorite Bond, and none of the Roger Moore films are my favorite Bond films. They're probably not in my top 5, but they are nice. They're easy to watch. They are. I mentioned in the last one I was on, the Bond novels were airport novels. These are like that as a film. They're easy to pick up. You can enjoy it on a wet bank holiday afternoon. It doesn't tax you too much, and it's entertaining. And Roger Moore does that beautifully. He's got the lines. It's entertaining. It's, apart from some obvious points, inoffensive. There's not too much sex. There's not too much violence, apart from, as we'll find out later, people blowing up and stuff. And you could put your 10-year-old child in front of it and not have to cover their eyes for most of it.
Yeah.
And Roger Moore's humor, because of the humor that they put into the script, means that any gratuitous sex or violence would then be out of character with him. It wouldn't fit in the film, and so it makes it a nice film. I have a fondness for Roger Moore. He's all right.
Yeah, no, totally. I should mention actually that he is not Kananga that he meets. It's Mr. Big. And spoiler alert, because we find this out later in the film, Mr. Big. So Mr. Big is a mob boss. I'm just giving the description from the archives. Mr. Big is a mob boss who runs a chain of restaurants throughout the United States. And he basically launders his drugs and all of that stuff through there, because he's basically a heroin dealer. And that was the other nice thing about this film, actually, that it wasn't Spectre, it wasn't Blofeld, it wasn't some international holding the world hostage conspiracy. It was just a real sort of everyday kind of problem of
greedy drug dealers,
Yeah, basically, that's it. Having to stop a drug dealer who, had been killing CIA people. So it was actually Mr. Big, but I think it's Rick. Is it Rick Baker, the famous makeup guy?
Listen, Bobby, this mask he was wearing at the end of the film was so obvious.
Yeah,
For a
it
second,
was.
I thought it might have been another agent, like a white agent trying to be a black man.
Oh,
Obviously, it
like
didn't
in White
happen.
Chicks.
Yeah.
Making my way downtown. Sorry. Now I'm thinking of the Vanessa Carlton song. If you've seen White Chicks, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah. So anyway, so that's the whole kind of reason, you know, Mr. Big's there because he's the mob boss and so on. And Solitaire's the one that they keep. She's got special powers to see into the future. He's obviously really superstitious and into all this other voodoo tarot nonsense, and he basically keeps a slave to predict the future for him. So yeah, Alex.
Yeah, I just wanted to be in defense of some of that like spy shit, because all of the thing is, all of the Spectre plot and everything is absurd, but it does give it an overarching, like, well, it does give it a narrative that I think is a little bit lacking here. So there is stuff happening, but sometimes you could easily, like, you know, go away, come back after your cup of tea or whatever, and end up going, where am I now? What am I doing? Why am I in a crocodile sanctuary? Where did that come from? And there's a few bits like that where the other thing is, you know, why is the drugs den all of a sudden high tech when everything else has not been? And so there's some weird sort of mixes of things in this film. It doesn't make it less enjoyable. It just confuses me a bit.
Yeah, well, I think you have to kind of really pay attention, because it's like, you know, they had the Caribbean link, didn't they? Because the CIA agent gets killed over there, and that's Dr. Kananga's island where that third agent got killed.
San Monique.
San Monique.
Yeah.
But then
place, isn't it? Yeah.
Through their intelligence in Harlem, they find out that Mr. Big has an interest in that island and Dr. Kananga, who basically, they don't know that he's like a massive drug lord. He's basically meant to be a dictator of that island. And so that's what they're investigating. And then that's where Bond obviously gets involved. So
yeah,
but I totally get how, because even just describing it, it sounded really convoluted. So if you miss like 10 seconds or something, then you'd be like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, and it is like that, I think, for this. That's what confuses a lot of people. Is that, you know, something very random will happen, like a scene with a sheriff from the West or something, and you just end up going, but where did that come from? And it came from nowhere. There wasn't a background behind it. It just came because it was funny at the time, and it went in. But if you don't let these things bug you, if you just kind of go with the flow, I think it's really enjoyable. But yeah, if you're a critical thinker, it's more confusing.
Yeah, I think the reason I got on so well with this film is because I put my brain on the side table and
it was all the CBD.
Just enjoyed the ride.
Bobby, that was what it was.
I didn't know that existed until yesterday, but I'm feeling pretty awesome. Phil?
All I wanted to say was, you're right that this doesn't have the international crime bosses of Spectre, but the reality is this is street level drugs. And I just want to raise one very serious point, that it is street level drugs, and the only way you can get these street level drugs on the streets is through international cartels. And that is something that they don't really address in the film, because they don't want to. This is a fun, slightly camp movie with Roger Moore at the helm, and they handle the drugs element in such a way that it is these people on the streets that are bringing it in. But the only way that it can come in, let's be real, is through those international cartels of the likes of Spectre. They're the only ones that can get that on the streets in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, from here, that's where he then goes to the Caribbean, to San Monique, and he meets, well, there's an assassination attempt on him. Now, I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, but his hotel room, I thought, was laid out exactly the same way that Sean Connery's was laid out in, I think, in Dr. No.
I noticed it as well.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the amazing yellow floral bed linen, obviously.
Yeah. Exactly. And then obviously the attempted assassination by Snake, which didn't work. But that was so cool, because we were kind of like, look, there's a snake. there's a snake. Like, deal with the snake. Have you just seen? He's just seen the snake. Why is he continuing to use shaving foam or deodorant or whatever it is? Oh, he's gonna burn that snake's dead. That's barbecue snake. And I actually wrote barbecue snake in my notes, and that's what happened. Oh, I wrote Felix.
Well, I wrote
No,
snakes,
Felix
snakes in a
Leiter.
bath, not snakes on a plane. Snakes in a bath.
Yeah. Why? Ah, and before that, oh, hang on, we've got some tailoring talk. San Monique. So when he gets to San Monique, comes out the airport, another great outfit. He's wearing a very light grey suit. Sort of reminded me of the one I've just done for you, Rich, but without yours has got all that beautiful roping going through the fabric, with a fuchsia tie. And I thought that combination was just it was awesome. Rich?
You're on mute.
Yes, I agree. He looked amazing. There were two thoughts I had as he barbecued the snake, which were, A, that's just ruined the cigar. And I have been watching lots of videos with Eddie, what's his name, from Davidoff. So that it would have ruined the cigar. And also, he didn't draw the cigar first, so the tip wasn't glowing. It wouldn't have lit the aerosol. But it didn't ruin it for me. I just went, that wouldn't have worked.
Okay, yeah.
Well, going back to your suit, was the suit you're talking about that sort of slightly beige one with a high waist, with a slight flare to it?
No. This suit was light grey. It was very light grey, white shirt, and he was wearing a bright, like a fuchsia tie with it.
Right.
Fuchsia is a shade of pink, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm just trying to see.
Just let you know. Whilst John's looking for that, and then Rosie Carver turns up, our CIA agent, and I wrote here, she's pretty useless, isn't she? Because she just seemed to be damsel in distress straight away. You know, it's like she turns up, works out, eventually works out that she's not there to kill him and so on, and then she goes in the bathroom, comes out screaming. But then she redeems herself because then he sees it as an opportunity. This is where we start to see sex pest Roger Moore Bond creep in. So he does the old Connery thing, taking advantage of her being in distress. And then she very cleverly says, well, that's why I booked separate rooms. But then she goes into that room and then she comes out screaming again because there's a little shrunken voodoo head doll with a small hat and feathers there. So that's what I wrote. She's totally useless.
That was in the same film as Yaphet Calcutta across Ocean 10th Street. That was Gloria Hendry. She was the one. Yeah.
What disappoints me about her and Jane Seymour to a certain extent was, and at least Seymour's, you could see it with the character, but both of them were damsels in distress. Whereas in previous films, particularly
on Her Majesty's Secret Service,
you had Diana Rigg, who absolutely was not. And then in later films, it happened too. But we've already established in the series that you can have a strong leading lady, and then they chose not to. And I just thought, it's a wasted opportunity, I thought.
Yeah, totally. And of course, you can't have a early years Bond film without a massive backhand on the lead Bond girl either, which still makes me feel quite uncomfortable. But again, film of its time and all of that sort of thing. Okay, so what happens after this? I can't.
The denim suit. Talk about the denim suit. Talk about the horrible denim.
Well, this is where. Well, this is my very next note, because then he goes with Rosie, and we've got a really big. We've got a really big link to Dr. No here, because the CIA agent who captains the boat that takes them out to the island is Quarrel Jr., who is the son of Quarrel from Dr. No.
There you go.
Wow. Who didn't know that? Who did I just impress? Whose mind did I just blow? Alex, mind blown. John, mind sort of blown.
I knew that.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, did nobody say to him, funny, you don't seem to have aged much as my dad has?
I don't get the joke that Richard just made, so I'm going to move on. So Bond is wearing. So me and my wife were having a debate over this because I was like, "Is he wearing double denim?" And I was like, "No, it can't be. It must be like cotton or linen or something." And then I put, "No, it is double denim," and he's wearing a string vest as well. But as terrible as that outfit is, because none of us would ever wear any of that, he still looks good somehow. He's so handsome. 6'2", Roger Moore. My mum, I remember my mum when I was a kid, she fancied the pants off him, and later Pierce Brosnan. But I don't know, somehow he makes it work, even if it's not our cup of tea. No one's raising their hands for double denim.
He just looks like an upmarket Rabsy Nesbitt to me in that string vest. Sorry. I was not in any way moistened by his sight at that part of the film. I wrote down the denim suit and string vest is awful. What were they thinking?
Sorry, I've just Googled Rabsy Nesbitt because I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my days.
What?
For the previous shocks to me, I've been able to keep quiet. Like not seeing any of the Dalton Bond films. But how do you not know who Rabsy Nesbitt is?
Because, okay, so what was this, 1988? I was about 10, 11 years old, and I just started secondary school in Croydon. I was getting the shit kicked out of me every single day, so I was probably more worried about that. And also trying to get hold of a pirate copy of Predator so that I could watch what the other kids had seen that I hadn't.
Write a fan fiction about it.
I wrote fan fiction after. What, wrote fan fiction about my own life?
No, about Predator.
Yeah. So Prey is awesome, by the way. I hope that we'll be reviewing that at some point on another podcast that John and Alex and I are involved with called Play Pause Turn, available wherever you like to get your shows. So yeah, Quarrel Jr. And it turns out, so this is a double cross. So it turns out that what's her face is working for Kananga. So she's not really quite a double agent, but she's working for the other side. And there is a bit there where she says, "Oh, would you have done what we just did if you'd known?" And he said, "Well, certainly not before," which was a bit it was a bit creepy. But there we go. And then she gets killed because obviously she's about to spill the beans to Bond. And it's the one thing Roger Moore was really, really good at through this entire film, I thought. He kept asking for information from just about everybody. So when he goes into the club in Harlem, he asks the waiter, "I want some information." And then this Rosie Carver, "I want information." And then he does it to Solitaire. It's like, "I want information before I sleep with you." And then he sleeps with her. He's like, "I want information now." "Oh, can I sleep with you again?" "Yes, but give me some information first. Then we can get down to it." So yeah, he asked for information a lot. He even asked for information, I think, when Kananga's threatening Solitaire. And he tells him, "I'm not going to tell you until I speak to Kananga." And then he asks for information at some point during that scene as well. Anyway, so she gets killed by the many voodoo skulls that are up on sticks in that part of the island where they are. And they've all got cameras in them and they've all got little machine guns in them as well. Why they don't kill Bond at this stage, I have no idea. No idea.
Because they've got another half of the movie to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no other reason. They could have killed him several times over.
Sorry. Is Bobby complaining that the bad guys are not trying to kill Bond in sort of long, like overcomplicated ways that allow him to escape? Is that, Bobby? If that's what you're concerned about, the next 20 odd films are going to be a bit troubling for you, I think.
Do you know what? Do you know why I love The Dark Knight? Because it's just grounded in reality, which is also why I love Jurassic Park. So anyway, so Bond needs to go and investigate what's going on, I guess, and he uses a hang glider, which is tethered to Quarrel's boat. Bond on a kite smoking a cigar. and looking really good. And
he's such a thug life in this, isn't he? He really is.
He totally is. He's just a baller, because not only that, when he swoops down on the hang glider, knocks that guard out, and then he parks the hang glider and he runs off it, and he takes the trousers off, and he's got the tan. This is what I think you were asking about. He's got the light tan suit on. So he's got the trousers on, and he takes the hang glide jacket off and turns it inside out. It's a reversible jacket. And then he puts it on. He's already got his shirt and tie on, and he just looks the fucking nuts. I was like, my God, yes, John's got his fake avatar zoomy sunglasses on and smoking weed and yeah. Bond, he was absolute baller in this. Rich?
I did look at that and go, can I get a reversible suit?
When I looked at that, my next note was Rich's. I'll read it to you. Cigar on a hang glider! Exclamation mark. Reversible jacket! Exclamation mark. Brackets, small letters. Oh shit! Rich is going to ask if I can make this for him. So yeah.
But can you?
It was so cool. We have reversible fabrics. I've not actually made a completely 100% reversible jacket before, but
could be interesting.
Yeah,
I think
could be.
One of Dorme's cashmere ones is reversible. I
Yes.
was reading about it on the website today.
Yeah, you know which end of the price list the Dorme cashmere is, though, Rich. Be careful. So yeah, no, he just looked cool. And by this stage, obviously, the plot had just gone out of my head, because I was just basically looking at what was going on screen. Because then we get hit with this beautiful tan suit. He's wearing a brown tie, and he's wearing a brown striped shirt with it. He looks absolutely effing awesome. And then they proceed to put Jane Seymour in a series of outfits that just make me write Jane Seymour's cleavage, Jane Seymour's bust. Oh my God, I don't know what just happened, because I was just staring at Jane Seymour. If you can hear that
notes, Bobby.
that hissing in the background is my Bengal, by the way. I don't know if you heard that.
It's not your wife.
Yeah. So I need to sort a situation out where she's about to kill someone or something. But I put, did she just lose her virginity? So I imagine that her and Bond did get down to it, didn't they? Which was the whole card sequence with the lovers.
Because
Sorry, Alex, go on.
Well, he loads the deck, doesn't he? Yeah, he's literally going, just, why don't you guess? Why don't you guess what it is? And then she's like, it's the lovers, isn't it? Isn't it? And I just felt like that was a bit exploitative, and I was
It's a shag by fixing the deck, basically.
I don't know. It just I felt a bit dirty from watching that scene and going, she's really nice, but you know, even for me, Roger Moore feels a bit too old.
Alex, when she asks for another round in the bed, Bond says, "Well, there's no sense in going off half cocked."
Yeah.
I mean, there's no more. You can't get more on the nose than that, really, can you? Let's be honest.
No, you cannot.
And I've also got to say, you know, I'm watching it, you know, as someone who's got a 20-year-old niece, and if someone who's in their like mid-40s was like trying it on with like my niece like that, I'd want to kill him.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, so he's how old? He's 45 when he makes this film? 46. Yeah, he's 46 45. When he makes this movie. And she's 19, 20?
22, I think she was.
And we're sort of approximately the same sort of age range. So when you think about that, I mean, it's, yeah. And then it's even worse by the time he gets to View to a Kill, I guess, because by that time he's 58, 59. So yeah, a bit kind of, cringe, but she seemed to, but also it was really confusing because it was like, she was really upset that she'd just been cheated out of her virginity, but then I wrote, but she wants more. And I wrote more with two O's.
Very good.
So I was even punning while I was writing.
You'll be a cunning linguist, won't you, Bobby?
Yeah, very. I don't know what that relates to. Rich?
I totally see everybody's point on this. But one of the things that I think that I overlook sometimes is that, yes, he was a spy, and they're not nice people. They spend their lives deceiving people, and I think sometimes we put James Bond on a pedestal as somebody to aspire to, and he's not nice. He did seduce somebody half his age, with the sole aim of getting information, which he had to ask a number of times. And yeah, he's a nasty. They're not nice
Rich,
people. They're there to do a job and get
Rich. Girls don't like nice guys.
Girls like cars and money.
I'm afraid so. I mean, look at 50 Shades of Grey, for goodness sake. I mean, they don't like nice guys. They just want the mean guys.
We've done really well because we haven't really segued at all during this, so I'm going to send us off on one now. When 50 Shades of Grey came out, or that book or whatever, did anyone else notice so many people reading it on public transport?
I can tell you this, I will say this, when my wife was reading 50 Shades of Grey, that was the happiest period of my marriage.
Why?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
because
yeah.
when she...
Careful now.
Because what do you think? You know what I mean?
Because you got down to some spanking, Harry.
She was, I tell you what, she was up for it pretty much every night, and I had the best time. So that's why
literary
it was
Spanish fly, basically.
It was the best part of my marriage, because when she was reading 50 Shades of Grey, I was getting it on pretty much all the time.
Does she listen to this podcast, Phil?
No.
Sorry?
I don't think so.
Does she listen to this podcast at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So moving along, we all agree that
That's the last time you segue.
So yeah, going back to the last time I segue and let Phil talk, I just realised I've got the power to mute all of you on this. So I'm going to mute Phil for that. So for a while, Phil is now in the Tailoring Talk sin bin that I just invented. But Rich makes a really, really good point there. We do put Bond up on a pedestal, the whole kind of we want to be like him and all of that. Do we really? Because when you think of the things that he gets up to, think of our favourite sex pest, Sean Connery, and not Sean Connery, but the character that he played. Not good. So that was a really, really good point, Rich. Thank you very much. For Phil's on mute, but we can't hear a word he's saying. There we go. Explicit rating for this one. Great. I have to check that box. But moreover, she is upset because she's seemingly lost her powers. And this obviously presents a really big problem with Kananga, because that's the reason he's got her around, and she has no powers. He'll do what he did to her mother, which was presumably he had her mother killed. And so that leads to the scene where I think
it's the opium fields, isn't it? Don't they run to the opium fields after this?
Oh yeah, they do, because they escape, don't they? First of all, they because he says, "Don't worry, because I've got a boat, so he won't be able to find you." So they escape by boat. They fly to New Orleans.
Don't they have a bus chase?
Yeah, they're on the bus.
And then it's exactly. Yeah, it's the bus. How could we? Because bus sequence. Hello. So for that stunt, because what happens when you run a double-decker bus into a bridge is it generally doesn't really go anywhere. The top was taken off and put on ball bearings so that when it hit, it just slid off. Jane Seymour was actually on the bus when that happened. So the director had a policy that they would run everything 3 times with dummies or whatever. And if the dummy didn't get touched by a speedboat going overhead or whatever it was, that then they could put the live actor in there. So you could argue that the safety standards had gone up a bit from the Connery days when they just let stuntmen go on fire and just let them burn to get the take in the bag. But yeah, so she did have quite a hairy experience on this. Phil, hang on. Wait a minute. I need to
Getting
unmute.
back
I don't
on.
know how to
Yeah,
unmute
exactly.
him.
I've done it.
There we
I've done it. I just wanted to ask: have we moved on from when Jane Seymour and Roger Moore are walking up the hill in San Monique?
We skipped that.
or have we
Yeah,
got-
it's a good
Yeah,
point.
we skipped that because of your whole 50 Shades of Grey.
Okay, because
You know,
I just wanted to.
peering into your sex life, Phil.
Okay, no, well, that's fair enough. But to be fair, the I talked about the fact that the other actors who are
I mean,
Yaphet
the
Kotto's-
Mark Holmes of Tailoring Talk, ladies and gentlemen.
who's Mark Holmes?
Mark's our other dear friend and colleague from
Okay, fine.
Play Horse Turn. We love you, Mark.
Oh, yeah, that other podcast that you keep promoting.
You
So
are the brown Mark Holmes, yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Subtle. So no, but they're in San Monique and they're going up the hill, and then all of a sudden, because we talked about Yaphet Kotto's henchmen, and they were all the other characters were played brilliantly by the other actors, but then all of a sudden we get Jeffrey Holder, and he plays this guy who's who's playing a flute, and then he's going up the hill. And I just felt that it was just a completely unnecessary character that just found his way into the film. What's everyone else's thoughts on this guy?
You mean Baron Samedi?
Baron Samedi, yeah.
I mean, he's quite important. He's in all the posters and things. He's quite a striking figure with his half-painted face or his skull face.
He's a striking figure, but they didn't develop his character at all. It was just visual.
He's kind of like a devilishly sort of like an imp, isn't he? Really, he's like scene dressing more than anything else. I mean, he uses quite a nifty gadget though. He pulls his pipe apart and it's radio, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the baddies have better gadgets than Bond in this film generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Sorry, Phil.
I just wanted to get everyone else's opinion on him, because he was also in, if you remember, he was in the film Annie, and again he just seems to play these characters where he's just like, he was called Punjab in Annie, and he just plays these characters that just show up on the screen, don't really do much, but he's just happy to sort of play that sort of character. Just thought it was weird. So
apparently all of the scenes of him dancing and doing all the voodoo stuff were just him. He wasn't given any stage directions or anything, because apparently the actor knew all about that stuff. So they just let him get on with it.
Well, he was a dancer and choreographer, that's why.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And so was his brother.
He had a dance company called the Holder Dance Company, didn't he, Rich?
Yeah. Well, just completely off topic, but not 50 Shades of Grey off topic.
God, for that.
There's whenever I hear Baron Samedi, I'm reminded of the track on Sheet Music by 10cc. It's the name of one of those tracks, which would go really, really well in this film, because 10cc were geniuses and they write a great record. But yeah, it's on their debut album.
10cc, the ones who wrote Who's Gonna Drive You Home?
I'm not in love.
no, that's not them. 10cc do I'm Not in Love, and they do Dreadlock Holiday.
Yeah, and Rubber Bullets, Good Morning Judge.
Bullets.
I know
Street
Dreadlock
Shuffle.
Holiday.
You're talking about the Cars, Bobby.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The guy from that's died recently. Well, in the last 10 years.
I don't know who that was.
Last 10 years.
So then we did the bus thing, and the Baron Samedi is important, isn't he? Because basically he's part of the whole, kind of heroin smuggling operation and stuff, and growing operation, because they keep the islanders fearful because of all the voodoo and the dark magic and all that sort of thing. So that's basically his role, is to keep that whole kind of occult thing going so that the islanders don't question anything. So then we get to the crocodile bit, because what's his face, Mr. Big / Kananga finds out that Bond and Solitaire did it.
You've jumped way ahead in the film here, Bobby. Way ahead.
Really? How?
Yeah. Well, because you know, he goes to New Orleans. They trash an airfield. He terrorizes a learner flyer. There are more great suits. There's more great cleavage from Seymour. Kananga monologues. More ad libs. Butterhook to the big guy with a hook. You've got a lot of sort of elaborate deaths set up for him, and then we get to the crocodile bit. So it's quite a lot. You missed out.
Yeah, sorry, because I wrote the flare. So after the half-cocked bit where she loses her virginity and then goes in for round 2 or request round 2, I got the flares, chopper, bus, low bridge. They got mileage out of the theme song. They did get mileage out of the theme song.
They did.
It's where Taika Waititi got the idea to just keep reusing Immigrant Song over and over and over through Thor Ragnarok. Jane Seymour's hair is lovely. Sorry, I didn't mean to read that out loud. Her hair was lovely, wasn't it? Her hair should have been given an acting credit on its own. Seriously, it was beautiful. I just wanted to touch it.
Who thought, though, that the taxi driver with the sideburns sounded like the guy who did the voiceover for Hong Kong Phooey? Because I thought I had to look it up and check it wasn't the voice.
Oh, that's Scatman Crothers.
Oh yeah, it wasn't Scatman Crothers. Well, good memory there, Phil. But he just reminded me of like the voice of Hong Kong Phooey, one of my favourite cartoons of my childhood.
Was that the dog?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
A stripy cat called Spot. Sorry. Yeah. So getting back to the plot. Where were you, Bobby? Sorry, I've sidetracked you there again.
Yeah.
Planes being crashed.
Yeah, and then heroin smuggling, poppy fields, New Orleans, Harlem taxi driver ! Because I was like, oh, he looks like the taxi driver in Harlem.
He was the same guy.
It was the same guy. Yeah. And then I think I start funeral lot again. Oh, he has his tailor at the hotel. Ah, the flying lesson. There we go. Yeah. So I wrote flying lesson, Mrs. Bell. So basically, the gangsters chase him into this sort of airfield thing, and he commandeers a plane just as a woman is about to have her flying lesson. And her name is Mrs. Bell. And I wrote, Mrs. Bell looks like Maz Kanata from The Force Awakens. Did she not, though? She totally does. With that cap and with the glasses. That may be where they got the character inspiration for that, for Star Wars.
I don't think that's true.
But she does look like Maz Kanata. You're not my Wookiee lover. That again, Star Wars reference only makes sense if anyway.
Taxi for Bobby, please. Taxi for Bobby.
But that whole sequence, they thought it would be just quite fun if they had a chase sequence where the plane never takes off. And I did get a bit Benny Hill after a little while, but
a bit Benny Hill. We had flipping over cars. It was just literally as soon as the wings were taken off, you could have put that music in the background and then just see him going, oh no, he's going to go through the no, it's coming back. Oh no.
Oh, through the hangar again.
Yeah, no, he's going around. Oh, there's another one sliding into a plane. Woo. You know, if you'd have had that music and sound effects behind it, I think it would have just tipped you over. I think at that point you would have just like, can't take any of this seriously and just like walk out in a storm.
It was a pretty amazing car that drove up the side of the plane and flipped. I thought that was pretty impressive for that, that sequence.
Yeah, there was a well-placed ramp, but it wasn't. It was a good thing. Again, I don't mind any of it. It was just really odd, madcap, as you say.
Thing is, he has these incidents where the bad guys chase after him and stuff, and he gets away or gets out of a situation. But then he ends up in a situation that puts him back in direct conflict with them again. Because after the whole aeroplane chase thing and so on, he ends up with Felix going to the club in Harlem, right? Because then that's where we get the original rendition of Live and Let Die, the rendition of Live and Let Die by the singer who was meant to sing it over the title credits, but Paul McCartney said, no, I don't think so. I've written it and I was intending to sing it. So
I bet if they told old Macca they're going to use Shirley Bassey, he'd have said yes.
No, I reckon they wouldn't. No, he was adamant, and between the producers, they were sort of like, well, you know, he says he's going to
Well,
sing it, but we want her to do it. And the other one says,
didn't Saltzman say no to the Beatles originally before they went to?
yeah, but that's why
Apple Records?
that's why he said let him do what he wants,
Yeah,
because he regretted having passed the Beatles over in the first place. The Beatles, sorry, that's how we say it in St. Retham. So he does end up back in that Harlem club, and one of you's going to have to fill in what happens there, because all I wrote was Whisper is super fat, and that white belt against that red outfit is totally wrong. It does nothing for his figure. So by this time, I was just basically doing my job.
So Roger Moore. I was just going to say, James Bond doesn't want to fall for the same trick twice by going into a booth. He says, "Oh, could we possibly go somewhere near the stage?" And
yeah, because I had an unfortunate turn. I had an unfortunate turn.
Yeah, so I had an unfortunate turn
before. Yeah,
but he still doesn't get out of it, because he ends up getting lowered into the actual
Kananga's
Did you
den.
not think though?
Yeah,
they must have basically every table in that place has some sort of spurious gadget or lift or ramp or like chains come down and wrap him up, or just so that wherever he chooses to sit, he'll be smuggled away. The mechanics in that place, the pistons and machinery under the floor, it's like a Rube Goldberg machine that sells chicken wings. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
or it's just an old speakeasy.
Yeah, everything spins round.
Yeah,
maybe the poppy gangsters, the heroin gangsters, whatever they are actually part of Spectre's operation. Because if you look at the mechanics of the ways a lot of the stuff that they have works, it's the same as what Blofeld has. What he has all of his people sitting on when they have their board meetings and stuff.
Lots of shiny metal slides into lower rooms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there we go. But then after this is where we then get to the next big set piece. And I've regressed to childhood. This is what happened as a child when I saw this film. I just went set piece to set piece. I had no idea what the hell was going on. This is the worst. I know it's the worst episode of this Bondathon to date.
Alex's narrative theory, then, aren't you? That it doesn't really matter because there's no story. It's just a set piece to set piece. I mean, Richard might have disagreed with me there, but no, he's not.
No, he's not. He's not disagreeing. But this is where we then they get hold of Bond yet again. So this is attempt number 527 to kill Bond, and they take him to the crocodile place, and there is a sign on the thing that says trespassers will be eaten. Now here's the bit of trivia for you. So while they were scouting locations in Jamaica, they drove past that gate with trespassers will be eaten and got curious. And that's where they met Kananga, who was the crocodile rustler, I'm going to call him, who owned that sanctuary place. And so they decided to switch the location to Jamaica and to use that and write it into the film somewhere. And then, as Richard mentioned earlier on, they did use Kananga to actually get do the stunt of Bond escaping by treading over the crocodiles like they're stepping stones, and he almost got his leg taken over in the last second to last take.
I didn't believe that was actually happening. I thought he can't really be running across crocodiles.
No, it was real. So they lined the crocodiles up and they tied them down.
How do you line crocodiles up?
I don't know. He's obviously got a way to handle them. You stand there, or they got Arnie in to say, "Stand there, or you'll be luggage," like he did in the film with James Caan. What was it called? Remember that film? You remember that film?
Even James
and then he shoots the alligator in the zoo, and he's like, "You're luggage." Sorry. Is this CBD?
I want Bobby to always take CBD before every podcast from now on.
I do too.
I basically turned into that sequence from On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Bobby needs a plate of cookies.
I was about to say he's going to get some crisps out in a minute.
Watch out for those lights in the ceiling, though.
Someone get me the magic brownies. No, they tied the
Oh, we lost him.
Stop laughing, everybody.
He's gone. He's gone completely.
Ladies and gentlemen at home, I'm so sorry because I'm probably gonna miss editing this bit out. But I love these guys and we have so much fun. So they tied the crocodiles down. They tied the bodies down, but they left the tails and the heads free to be able to lash and snap. And
the most dangerous bits, then.
Yeah, the dangerous bits. And they did 5 takes in total. I think it was 5 takes, and they got Mr. Kananga, who owns the thing, to do it. And the second to last take, the croc basically looked up and managed to take a bit of his shoe off. And he turned around to the director, and Guy Hamilton, I think it is, and said, "Look, they know what's coming now. They know what I'm going to do. This is getting dangerous." So Hamilton said, "Okay, well, we'll do one more take. Make sure you get it right this time." So the poor guy had to run across for the last time. He managed to do it. And I thought they filmed it really well because the way they edited it, you believe that it was Moore that did the stunt himself. It was done really, really, really well, I thought. And
he didn't get like nearly 200 stitches after this.
I don't know. I didn't know that fact.
There's so many bites. They had to keep putting new suits on him because he kept getting his suits ripped off by the crocodiles.
Oh wow!
And he had about 193 riches, 193 stitches. Like ridiculous.
Yeah, it was up there. It's close to 200.
They paid him 60 grand for that scene though, so it's worth it.
I did right.
The thing about this scene though, the thing I was going to say about this scene is it's very much like misdirection of a magician because all I was doing was looking at the crocs. So it could have been anyone that was running across. Yeah. It would not have mattered because I was just nervous about the crocodiles. I could see the way that they were lined up that he was obviously going to run across it, but then I thought, how was he going to do it? But it worked really well. Wouldn't have mattered who was running across it at all.
Yeah. I mean, basically what happens for viewers who, if for some weird reason, are listening to this and haven't seen the film but are persisting anyway, thank you. Write in tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. I'll send you a prize. So Bond is left in the middle of this kind of little lake on a stone, and there's crocodiles around, and the idea is that they'll just eat him. And so he's obviously thinking how he's going to get out of this situation. And so the first thing he tries is there's a boat anchored on the other side. He doesn't know it's anchored, but he then uses his Rolex, which has a very strong magnet on it, to try and pull the boat towards him. And the boat does start coming towards him, but then it's stopped by the rope because it's tied up. But I wrote, feed Bond to the crocs. Bond is a Jedi? Because it really looked like he was using the Force, right? Yeah.
I have a problem with the watch, and I appreciate. I mean, no, the Rolex is stunning, but the highly intensified magnetic field is also really directional and selective. So he can point it at a teaspoon or the capsule, as we'll see later on, but it will ignore all the other metal things around it. I thought.
Were you concerned, Rich, that he'd put his own fillings out with it when he was doing it or something?
Yeah, stuff like that. I just thought.
Yeah, I thought that as well. I thought, well, surely that magnet would just pull all other metal objects to him. Yeah, exactly.
Bond walking around with saucepans on his body and like spoons and stuff.
Yeah, but you know, as we've seen in previous Bond movies, I'm thinking You Only Live Twice predominantly here, that science fiction and science fact never really meet in these movies.
And it's still not an invisible car, so it's not that bad.
And oh god, that rubbish that we've got to look forward to. Sorry. So yeah, but then when he escapes, he then gets in a speedboat, and then this is where we have an absolutely awesome sequence. If they cut all of that crap out with Sheriff Pepper, the American sheriff, that was the thing that was losing my interest. Now I know from listening to the really 007 guys who are watching these films live on the big screen and doing similar reviews to us that don't descend into as much chaos as ours seem to for some reason. primarily me. They took children with them, and there were a lot of children in the audiences in the cinemas at the screenings that the guys went to, and they really, really enjoyed the Pepper stuff. But I hated it. I was like, what? Why do we even need this? But the boat chase itself, isolated from the Sheriff Pepper, was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I thought he was, the reason I keep saying Sergeant Pepper, because I thought the reason he might have been named Pepper was a tenuous link to Sergeant Pepper, Lonely Hearts Club Band, or whatever the Beatles thing. Yeah, Beatles reference, exactly. Phil?
I think with Sheriff Pepper, this is around the time when Deliverance came out, and there was a lot of films with this whole redneck vibe, which then leads into things like Smokey and the Bandit, which was extremely popular, and then it probably finished off with Dukes of Hazzard and the Fall Guy.
Big old tree.
Yeah.
So I think that because it was very much of the time that it needed these sorts of characters, because Deliverance was such a popular film around this period, and I think they probably wanted to cash in on that element as well. It was like squeal like a pig, but it was a bit more of a comedic guy.
Yeah. So. just going back a second, I thought it was interesting that when he escapes from the Crocs, he then obviously lays the bait so that they wander into the labs before he blows the entire drug production facility up. But obviously, because Carolina said, why is he leading the Crocs in there if he's just going to blow them up? And I said, no, it's to get the people out, because he obviously doesn't want to commit mass murder and kill all of them. But I wonder if it was Connery's Bond, if he would have bothered with all of that. I even wonder if Lazenby's Bond would have bothered saving all the people. He would have just killed all of them. Anyway, sorry, it was just a thought. And there was when sorry, he was going for it there. Rich.
Yeah, just picking up on what Phil said, we have the disadvantage of watching these films quite some time after they were released, so we don't get that context of they were trying to compete with other films and be commercial successes. So there's loads of stuff. So we don't get that now. We have to have experts like Phil pick up the context in which they were released.
Yeah. So Broccoli was an avid cinema goer, and the reason why was because he wanted to see what audiences reacted to and really liked and what didn't work. And then he would come back and give his notes to script writers and have things changed. And you can see where a lot of that went into this film. You know, the black exploitation thing was really popular. Yeah, thank you, Phil. Was really popular at this time. The redneck, sheriff comedy value was another thing that was going on, etc., etc., etc. And part of me admires his dedication to this franchise that he built, but part of me also thinks, some of the decisions made in some of these films are solely down to him. Like what was the one with where he had that Diamonds Are Forever. The reason Diamonds Are Forever is such a travesty is all down to Broccoli, basically. John?
Well, I said it before on the podcast, and I'll say it again. I'm just trying to think if there's an equivalent series of films that so accurately captures historic events through all the decades as the Bond films.
I've got one.
As a historian, maybe Star Wars, I don't know. As a historian, the Bond films, if you look at the actual process of filming and the social and cultural mores around each film, they're actually a really interesting timeline of our history. I'll say it again as we talk about this later on in the subsequent films. Phil, can you think of another example of this of history?
Yeah, I was going to say Dirty Harry, because Harry Callahan was making films from the 70s right through to the 80s. It's the same actor and it's the same character, and then as time goes on, he has to be more and more sort of pleasant to his partners. In the very beginning, he didn't care if they were going to get killed or maimed or beaten up or anything, and then later on he has more of an understanding nature to the partners that he was working alongside, and he was less he was more willing to kind of like toe the line in later films like Magnum Force and things like that. But in Dirty Harry, It was people are just bad, and the only way you can destroy bad people is by destroying them, and that's it. That's all there is to it.
I'm thinking, if you're thinking of a single person through history, maybe Chuck Norris. I mean, he's never really got rid of his denim flares, has he, Chuck? He's almost like standing still in time more than anything else. But
well, I think Roger Moore probably borrowed one of Chuck Norris's outfits for
that's because time moves around Chuck Norris.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Brilliant. Very good, Rich. Very, very
you're right.
good.
Yeah, very good.
But back to the speedboat chase.
Whoa.
It was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, it made up for not having an Aston Martin in it.
It was the first thing they filmed, wasn't it? When I'm reading his diaries, it's the first shoot was the boat sequence, because poor old Roger Moore had a crash in the boat and cracked his tooth and hurt his knee, and had to film sort of injured for the rest of the scenes. That's why he's sitting down in the boat lock, so he doesn't have to walk around because he's limping. So I think it's interesting that you don't get that sense of when each sequence is filmed based on the production needs of the filmmakers. But this was his first few scenes, and it's a cracking scene as well. Some cracking shots on it.
I don't think Roger Moore gets enough credit because people, seem to have this impression of him that he's just some sort of lazy, rich actor or whatever. But he suffered a lot for his craft. Ivanhoe, I think it was Ivanhoe when he was filming that series back in the early 60s, late 50s. He broke ribs.
Well, I mean, the boats in this scene were jet boats, so the brakes don't work when they're not moving. So if the engine were cut out, which happened quite a lot of these scenes, he couldn't then stop the boat, which is why he drove into a corrugated iron shed and broke his tooth. So the brakes only work when the engine's actually running on these things.
Yeah,
they're fast boats to get those leaps across the gaps and things.
Yeah. So we're almost kind of getting into the last couple of acts of the film, because he then goes to San Monique again, and then this time with the CIA guys, and Coral basically kind of goes and plants all these timed explosives throughout all the poppy fields, because obviously the idea is they're going to blow it up and bring this whole operation down. And in meantime, Solitaire is about to be sacrificed, and this was another point of frustration for me, because Samadhi was really waving that snake in her face, and we were just screaming at the TV, like, do something, shoot him or something. And also, is Bond carrying a 45? Speaking of Dirty Harry, is that a 45 he's got in his hand? It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I was like, if he shoots someone with that, he's going to blow that guy's head clean off.
Yep.
It's not as usual, is it?
Very good.
Rich, have you seen any of the Dirty Harry films?
As you can tell by my blank face, no.
Oh my God. You don't have to watch all of them, but watch Dirty Harry and watch Magnum Force.
Although I also know that Dirty Harry is one of the most misquoted films. The famous quote in Dirty Harry is not what everybody thinks it is. But also, and I'm going to say this and then probably have to, take myself away from this podcast for the rest of the time. I haven't seen Star Wars either.
Oh no. I think you've lost everyone now.
Yeah,
Bobby's really feeling Bobby's feeling the effects of the CPD now. It's for real.
No, it's gone. It literally that just shot it out of my veins.
Yeah.
He's hallucinating.
John's gone.
That must be hallucinating.
John's walked off. John's given up.
Sorry, that's not true. I have seen Star Wars, at least 3/4 of it, and went, what's the point? Yeah, sorry. Do not get it. And almost every fan of Star Wars uses the line at some point in their argument as to why it's the best film ever. Oh yeah, but you've got to think about it at the time. No, I don't. If it's a bad film, it was a bad film then, it's a bad film now.
Wow.
Oh my God. I anyone listening to this, I hope you watch the film all the way through. You can write in to tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com or send me a voice note on Instagram to give me your review of the film. But we're cutting this right now. I can't believe that. Oh my god! And it's not only the fact that he hasn't really seen it. It's not only the fact that he hasn't really seen it. It's the fact he just said it was shite.
You muted me. How come you didn't mute Rich?
Because I'll mute him in person when he comes to London on Saturday.
Wow.
I realise, of course, that it's a bad time to say my mum was from north of the river as well, so that's another thing.
How long are you down for, Rich? Because I'm going to download the original Star Wars trilogy to my iPad, and we're going to sit in the workroom, and I'm going to lock the doors, and you're going to watch it.
I'd be quite happy to give it another go.
Okay, great.
In all seriousness,
glad that you're open-minded. Anyway, sorry, we need to get back to this.
I was going to say, in all seriousness, Richard, the Dirty Harry film, the first one, has a fantastic performance from Andrew Robinson, who plays the villain in it, and for that alone, it's worth watching. So,
I'll definitely give Dirty Harry a go. I might give Star Wars another go.
So he eventually does rescue Solitaire, and he chucks Baron Samedi into a coffin full of snakes and kills him. And then they escape below ground into Kananga's lair or whatever it is, because then I wrote looks like the leftover set from Enter the Dragon, because it did, and it did, didn't it, Phil?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it totally did, right? Because you could have just taken them out and put Bruce Lee in. It was the same set. And then when they're down there, they get captured, and then Kananga basically decides that he's going to feed them to his shark tank. But then he nicely, as he ties them up, he brings them a glass of champagne, doesn't he? But then there was another really funny scene, because then we get the thing with the shark pellets, where the shark pellet gun basically he it's like, what does it do? And it's got compressed air or something like that. It makes things blow up. And so Whispers, the fat henchman, is sitting on the sofa, and he points the gun at Whisper, and I'm thinking, no, please, he's not gonna kill him like that, is he? And then he shoots the sofa, and the sofa just expands, and then Whisper gets sort of pushed into the wall, which was quite funny. I imagine kids would have found that really funny as well. But then we get the worst death in the history of James Bond, in the history of cinema, possibly. It was absolutely terrible. The effects were awful.
It reminded me of that scene from Big Trouble in Little Chinatown, where one of the characters explodes as well.
Yeah,
Cloud. Cloud
basically
basically gets blown up. Yeah,
you know what I mean. He gets really angry and blows himself up pretty much. But I think they did it better in Big Trouble in Little Chinatown. This was bizarre.
Yeah, extremely, because it was basically. Sorry, Rich, go ahead.
I was going to say they do it even better in License to Kill.
Okay. Well, spoiler alert. Hello, I haven't seen it yet. So yeah, but basically, for the viewers at home, if anyone's still here, Bond uses his magnet Rolex again to get the bullet. Nothing else that was metal that was in the vicinity. And he basically shoves it in Kananga's mouth, because they end up going into the shark. Oh, his Rolex also has a rotating bezel that he's able to saw through the ropes with, which we didn't know about before. And they end up in the shark water, and then Bond basically shoves the capsule in his mouth, the shark pellet, and then Kananga blows up, like inflates and then explodes. And the special effect is
like a Stretch Armstrong.
Basically like a Stretch Armstrong, yeah, that toy. So yeah, but you can see it's an inflatable balloon. Now, Yaphet Kotto was not happy with this at all. Like, he didn't even want to be on set when they were blowing that inflatable, because he saw the inflatable and he was like, no way. And he was quite aggrieved about it up until the point after the film was released, and it made him an international superstar. And then he was like, I've been in one of the classic Bonds, I'm grateful to it, blah, blah, blah. But at the time, he was very, very offended. but yeah, I thought it was absolutely terrible. I don't know how in editing they didn't just look at that and say, guys, we need to reshoot this. It's shit.
I'm more angry about how they treated Japhet at the end of the film, because they were concerned about a black Bond villain. So he was not included in any promotional material. They wouldn't interview him. And then when it came to the premiere red carpet viewing, they wouldn't let him go along to that either. And I think that's absolutely terrible for a charismatic, excellent Bond villain.
Yeah. Also, there was a quote, because Carolina actually pointed out, and I had to rewind it. But during the chase sequence with the speedboats, and you've got, the American idiots running around. And sorry, my American listeners, I didn't mean you specifically.
It's just police, you mean?
Just your redneck cousins from down south that vote for Trump. But basically when he radios in for more help, and it's like, we've got black rodents, running rampant down here or whatever. I mean, come on. I mean, I imagine that's probably what Louisiana State Police would have described them as, and even worse.
Boy, they keep calling them boy as well, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Which is a very bad slave trade term.
Yeah, but there's no need to put it on film where you're potentially influencing a lot of people and so on. So again, film of its time. I know we have to keep saying that. Can't wait to get to the Daniel Craig ones now. So yeah. And then we think that's pretty much the end of the film. But Solitaire and Bond are on a train. Rich, take it from here.
Train.
Take it from here.
So they, I even like the one line before they get on the train where Felix says, "What are you going to do for 16 hours?" Say anything.
Well, he just looks at him like, "You idiot."
He's got a copy of 50 Shades of Grey, hasn't he? To read.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Jane Seymour, and who seems
half-cocked.
Well, Jane Seymour seems to have overcome her previous reticence, and is quite looking forward to a 16-hour train journey with Roger Moore.
Bit of a floozy, if you ask me.
So anyway, they go and get set up, and Roger Moore's doing.
They get set up like Phil and his wife. I can't believe I said that, because she's as good as my sister-in-law. This is awful. Sorry, carry on.
They I didn't get the reference when he lowered the couchette, lowered the bunk in the cabin.
I think he was just getting the bed ready.
But he said something along the lines of someone who cheats at cards or something along that, and I didn't get that reference.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear it because I was too busy looking at Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour, yeah. So anyway, so he lowers the bunk. He goes off to shave and make himself beautiful and smell nice, and she gets into bed. And
I did write another dressing gown.
Another dressing gown.
Another dressing gown.
Yeah. And at that point, we realise that Teehee, Teehee, isn't dead or got blown up or eaten by crocodiles, and has come back to exact revenge, as all good Bond baddies do, the Bond baddie henchmen do, and always on a train. Luckily, trains run on time in Europe in the 70s, so he knew which train he was on. And a beautiful fight ensues, good couple of one-liners, and chucks him out of a window, which is how they all go. They all go out of a window. Nice use of some nail clippers. Every man should have some. And it was great. Absolutely fantastic ending to a Bond film.
Yeah, well, we get the last shot of Baron Samedi on the front of the train, who we thought was dead.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, totally.
They did a thing in that film that I used to follow when I was DJing, which is first half hour, last half hour, and then nobody worries about what's in the middle. And they did it. The last 5 minutes were fantastic, and you forget a lot of what happened before. Brilliant.
So ironically, we've now created a review podcast episode for Live and Let Die, which is a film that you could take your kids to, but you can't let your kids listen to this podcast. Mostly because I've screwed it up through my perfectly legal accidental vitamin additives earlier.
Taking.
Okay, let's just call it for what it is. Well, I'm just trying to stay on brand and on theme, because it was a film about drug smugglers. So let's do a quick round robin of the things that we should have actually kind of highlighted. What did we think of the cast? Standouts? Any favorites? Let's go, starting with John.
I think we've undersold Whisper here, who was. I think there's so many charismatic characters in this film, more than any other Bond film. The whole the drug crew, but loved Roger Moore. Great first film for him. I'm a big fan of Felix Leiter in this film as well. I don't know why, he's just a great Felix. But I think, just hands up, I think the main character in this film is the other suits, the colourful suits on both every actor here. For me, it blew me away. This tapestry of colour, brilliant.
Yeah, Alex.
I think Julius Harris's Tee was very good, even if his arm was a bit ridiculous.
Because it did look like he was just holding the end of it the whole time, didn't he?
I know.
And it was only at the very end that we saw the whole prosthetic,
right.
but that obviously wasn't being used for the rest of the film. It did look really stupid.
But it was, the thing is, his acting was great, and he was a really good villain. So I did enjoy him, actually.
Yeah.
Gave me vibes of Jaws. Just someone who had the screen presence that you were like, oh no, I don't like him. He just nailed that.
Yeah. Good pun there. Rich.
I thought everybody was cast really well. I loved Roger Moore. Jane Seymour's hair was fantastic. Yeah, it was all good. It's just from a casting point of view, it was perfect. It was perfect Bond film.
Yeah. Phil?
I think this is an example of style over substance, in the sense that those suits that the Harlem drug barons were wearing were so fantastic and so stylish. And I don't think other Bond films will follow that level of style going forward, I don't believe.
Okay, well, we'll see, I guess. I'm really struggling to remember anything in between now and GoldenEye. Really, really struggling.
I mean, you've blanked out of your mind.
Isn't GoldenEye the next film? Where's the Man with the Golden Gun next film?
No, it's the Man with the Golden Gun is next, because they went straight. They started filming that immediately after they wrapped this up. They just went straight into it. So, and if you look at other films that Moore worked on around his Bond tenure, you'll realize how hard working he was. I mean, the guy was constantly working. It's incredible. Okay, brilliant. So let's wrap this up now with our ratings reviews. Our ratings and where we put them in and amongst the other 7 films that we've seen so far. So starting with, let's go in the reverse order. So Phil, out of 10, and where do you rank it out of the 8 films we've now seen?
I would rank this 8 out of 10. However, I don't hold any long-term memories of this film. I think this is one of those films that I could happily watch again, and I'd get something new from it. I very much like the characters and the actors that are in it. Yaphet Kotto, I thought, stood out in this. Soundtrack was excellent, but again, would have preferred it to a bit more Lalo Schifrin than George Martin.
Yeah, brilliant. So 8 out of 10, quite high from you.
Yep.
Richard?
7 out of 10. It's a solid film, and I would put it, out of the ones so far in the series, 3rd or 4th. Majesty's Secret Service, From Russia with Love. Yeah, so 3rd probably. Those 2 above it.
Yeah, so quite high.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Of the ones
Alex,
so far.
yeah, of the ones that we've seen so far. Alex?
I would give it a 6. I think it's really high on style, but I think the story really killed it for me. I would put it above On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but only just.
Only just. Okay, John?
See, I'm going to give it an 8 because of nostalgia and my first Bond film. So my grading is completely irrational, and I gave it an extra mark because I've just been watching the end of the film, the fight sequence with Hook Guy Teehee, and I paused it by mistake with subtitles on to see just Bond sweating with the subtitles "solitaire pounding" in brackets. And that's just got me an extra mark straight away for that. So that's my review.
I'm going to give it. I think 7.5 out of 10 feels right to me, but I'm going to give it an 8 because it did hold my attention all the way through. 2 hours did not feel like 2 hours with this film. And I liked the kind of change of pace, not just because it was a new Bond, but also the whole thing that it was just a nice little self-contained mission. It wasn't about, the world being exploded or the world being held to ransom by Spectre and stuff. It was nice to have a break from Blofeld and all of that sort of thing for once. And in terms of where I put it, so at the moment I've got From Russia with Love, followed by You Only Live Twice, followed by Goldfinger, followed by Dr. No. So that would put it joint 4th for me with Dr. No. Am I missing a film? And then I've got Thunderball, and then I've got On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Just so you know,
But you only live.
Bobby's turning around to look at what I think is some sort of wall chart with bits of string on pins, crisscrossing it like some sort of true crime murder show. He has his own kind of chart with everything on there.
I do, and I've got one for Star Wars because I'm trying to work out how the sequel trilogy was so bad, and I've got another one for the Predator movies, basically. I'm trying to draw a timeline of the different Predators and the Predaliens in there as well to work out how they evolved.
Predator versus
one of the things that makes this
film
Rich. One of the films that makes this film stand out of all the Bond films is that he wasn't off on a personal vendetta. This was a sanctioned op. He went out and did the job he actually gets paid to do, which almost never happens.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I liked it. It was like a breath mint or something after you've eaten a lot of something. So yeah, anyway, right there, let's wrap this up. God, this has been terrible. Thank you, all of you. Thank you so much. Who's looking forward to The Man with the Golden Gun?
It's a powerful weapon.
Yeah, I am.
On drugs, Bobby. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it. Do you know what? I'm looking forward to seeing Christopher Lee. I do have some memories of this film. I have more memories about The Man with the Golden Gun from GoldenEye on the N64 than I do anything else. And in fact, that's where I remembered Baron Samedi from as well. GoldenEye, that was such a brilliant game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this film, Man with the Golden Gun, because this was made around the time when we had 3-day week. So it'd be interesting to see how they go about making this film with a lot of the union problems that this country had at the time.
Well, do you know what, Phil? I mean, that may happen again with our power. We may have to go back to 3-day weeks. Yeah. As a teacher, I fully support this.
Yeah,
because you don't get enough holidays as it is.
No, it's all cashing in overtime, Rich. To be fair.
And again, any of my teachers that listen to this podcast, I know there's more than 2 of you at least. I apologise. We know that you work very hard, and that even when you're on holiday, you're working a lot of that as well, as I know, because one of my dear friends is a teacher, and
my dad was.
And his dad was, yeah.
Is there anyone who you haven't offended yet?
Well, the Venn diagram of teachers and
Star Wars fans, Rich.
That's pretty much everybody in the
and 50 Shades of Grey. I think you put those 3 together and you've got.
Yeah, that's it. That's the country.
That's everyone done.
The great news is you won't get cancelled here, will you?
No, quite right.
Yeah, this is true. I don't know what they're talking about. Look, thank you guys. Thank you all so much if you're still here for once again joining us. We do genuinely love making these 007 themed episodes, and I love getting your feedback after each.
And Bobby's gonna love getting some cookies after this one.
I do. Shut up. I do love getting your feedback after each one. So, Tailoring Talk is on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. Guys, where can we find you? So, Rich has got his new Instagram account that has nothing on it, called Rich Gore Clothing.
Yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Or you can just find him on LinkedIn and he'll ignore you.
Yeah.
Alex.
At Alex Hansford on Twitter.
Brilliant. Philip.
Yeah, you can find me, Philip Rahman, on LinkedIn.
And John is on Twitter.
Well, I'm on Twitter at John PR Evans. You can also find me on some very darknet sites, which are Star Wars fan forums, and how we plot to deal with people who don't watch Star Wars more than anything else. There's lots going on there.
Sorry, just bear with me a second while I go to my other wall chart and just draw a red line between John and Richard. And you can find me on Twitter at It's Bobby Revilla. The podcast is on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast. And you can support the show by buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Revilla, though after this episode, I don't know why you'd want to. And you can also help us out by reviewing us and giving a rating if your podcast listening vessel allows it. We will be back next month to review The Man with the Golden Gun. Meantime, take care, and I'll see you on the next episode of Tailoring Talk. Bye-bye.
Did you say buy me a cookie?
Buy me a coffee. buy me a special brownie.com.
Yeah, buy me a brownie.
Careful what you put in it, that's all.
Right, there we go. I'm ending this now.